Good evening, Hofstra fans, and welcome to our infamous Halloween episode, Spooky Sports Beat. I'm your host, Eddie Fitzgerald, and we've got a wicked episode for you today. We'll be talking about the MLB, the NFL, the NBA draft and its off-season, and a super special appearance by Quentin Thorne. So grab some candy, throw on a costume, because we're kicking things off right now with the fantasy football segment. I'm joined by the bizarre David Lazar and the devilish Griffin Schmoyer. Boys, how we doing today?
Doing great. Could not be more excited for Halloween and could not be more excited to talk some fantasy football.
Oh, Griffin.
I couldn't agree more. I'm ready.
All right, well, let's just jump into it because we have a lot to discuss. DeAndre Swift, the rookie out of Georgia, big week last week, 116 yards, 2 TDs, but Adrian Peterson, Kerryon Johnson still in that backfield. Do we like the long-term value of Swift for fantasy owners going forward?
Like all things Detroit sports, this is a very confusing situation, but what I have to look at is pure talent. Yes, Adrian Peterson is the name, but when I look at DeAndre Swift, I see a talented player. If he went to a better situation, if he went to Kansas City instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he would have been a top 10 pick in fantasy this year. Instead, he's in Detroit, where he struggled to get off to a good start, but right now I'm looking at him as someone that could be a top 15 running back going forward. He doesn't get as many carries as Peterson, but with Kerryon Johnson slowly fading away, I truly believe that Swift could be a top fantasy option going forward.
And Griffin, please.
I couldn't agree more. I think that long-term, you're looking at DeAndre Swift as the go-to back for the Detroit Lions. However, I would pump the brakes just now because you're coming up against two good run defenses in the Falcons and the Colts these next 2 weeks, who are top 5 in the league in run defense. So after that, they play Minnesota, who are further down. They have the 23rd ranked run defense. So then is really the time to pull the trigger and grab them.
Now, moving over to a different running back situation, a tandem in Arizona with Kyler Murray at the helm. You've got Kenyan Drake, the bona fide runner who was really good in the pass-catching game when they had David Johnson before they moved him off last season. Now, we've seen Chase Edmonds, the rookie, as well step into that role in the pass-catching game, making him very valuable. However, the carries for Kenyan Drake have gotten him 3 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks and a ton of yards. Who do you trust out of this backfield, David? Because I don't know.
The answer is so easy for me. It's Kenyan Drake. Kenyan Drake is a star in the making, but he's always had issues no matter where he's gone. Whether it was in Miami, where he was a part of a losing culture, fumbled the ball a lot and just wasn't used in the game plan, or in Arizona, where he's got someone on his heels. I look at Kenyan Drake as a star. He carries the ball 70% of the time for Arizona. He is a dynamic player in the pass-catching role and as a runner. He broke off a 69-yard run against Dallas. I look at him, and yes, he got off to a slow start, but he was consistent, putting up 60 yards almost every week. I love Kenyan Drake, and I think moving forward, he's a strong RB2 play and even an RB1 play.
And Griffin.
I like Kenyan Drake as a running back. I think, however, that he can be very streaky at times. I think there's always a chance that he's going to have a couple of slow games, and Chase Edmonds provides that spark for the Cardinals' offense to get the run game going again. I think they're both valuable in the fantasy world. However, I would be cautious as to when you're playing them because you never know when Kenyan Drake's going to hit a slide.
Absolutely. A little note about Kenyan Drake, 6.3 yards per carry in that initial 6 games after the trade from Houston. But moving forward to the Falcons offense down in the NFC South, they've gotten into a lot of shootouts recently, and that's led to big production from Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. However, more so, Calvin Ridley. He is the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy in terms of true points. He is undeniably the wide receiver 1. However, you have the name of a Julio Jones. So who do you like more? If you are a Calvin Ridley owner, should you cash in on the hype and trade for a big piece? Or should you go after a Julio Jones who might just add to production later in the season? David, going to you.
This one is tough for me because I love Calvin Ridley and I love what he provides for that offense, but I think it might be a fluke. Calvin Ridley is a great player, but that offense, Matt Ryan, I don't know if they're going to keep it up. Dan Quinn's gone, but they're not going to put up so many yards every week. And this is my idea. If you have Calvin Ridley, if you have Julio Jones, they're both coming off great weeks. Calvin Ridley, the only player in Falcons franchise history with 100 yards in 4 of his first 5 weeks. Why not trade him? And why not trade one of those players for a solid tight end. If you could get Travis Kelce, if you can get George Kittle, or if you can get a DK Metcalf or a wide receiver on the rise, I am cashing in on all the hype and getting some solid assets for a receiver.
And Griffin?
I disagree, because I think that the Julio Jones owners may be disappointed in his production thus far, but you have to remember that he's coming off of a hamstring injury and came off in a big way. He had 7 receptions for 137 yards and 2 touchdowns in their last game against Minnesota. You know, they're done with Dan Quinn. I feel like this is a new team, and the production is there, like you said, with Calvin Ridley. He leads the league in receiving yards right now. I think there's a chance that both of them are going to produce, or Ridley's going to continue to produce, and you're finally going to see some more of that classic Julio Jones that we've come to know and love very soon.
Just a full-fledged Atlanta offense. And lastly, before we have to wrap things up here, I want to get the streamer of the week. That is the quarterback who is available in more than 50% of the leagues. We got 4 this week, and they're going up against each other, 2 dueling sets of quarterbacks. We got Gardner Minshew going up against the Chargers and Justin Herbert, and Carson Wentz and Daniel Jones battling out tomorrow night on Thursday Night Football. Which quarterback do you like if you got a bye week?
This one is a great question, but I'm going with Daniel Jones. And here's the reason. Daniel Jones is probably the least talented of those quarterbacks. He's probably the worst name of those quarterbacks, but the reason I like him, he's not just a quarterback, he's a running back, and most importantly, he's going up against the Eagles' defense with that run game. He is the run game without Saquon Barkley. Yes, he's a quarterback, but he runs the ball a lot. He broke off a big run for almost 50 yards last week, and he is consistently dominant in the run game for the Giants. But not only that, the Eagles' defense is not very good. They give up a lot of points to quarterbacks, and Daniel Jones has been downright terrible this year, but fantasy-wise, he's still putting up a few points. I think Daniel Jones, while not the best quarterback in terms of football skill, I think in terms of fantasy, he's got a lot of potential moving forward.
And Griffin?
I disagree. I know that Daniel Jones is a good running back, and the Eagles' defense is not the best right now, and it's pretty banged up. However, they're a very good run defense consistently. And I wouldn't choose Carson Wentz in this situation either. His offensive situation is not great, and you're working with a makeshift offensive line. I'm choosing Justin Herbert for this game. He's been incredible as a rookie so far. He's blown me away with his performances. And going up against a really bad Jaguars pass defense, I like his matchup. And as much as I like Minshew as well, Justin Herbert has more touchdowns in his last game than Minshew does in his past 2. I think Herbert's the hot hand, working with a good Chargers offense. Even though it's banged up, I like Herbert here.
Very interesting. Justin Herbert almost pulling out that big win against the Saints. But unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap things up here. Thank you, David and Griffin, for joining me. I'm Eddie Fitzgerald, but stick around, because Spooky Sports Beat will be right back.